The black tomb guard did not move. Not when the wind swept across the marble. Not when the crowd began to whisper. Not when the man in the gray coat stepped closer to the rope and smiled like he had found something weak. Sergeant Marcus Reed kept his eyes forward behind dark sunglasses. 21 steps. Turn. Pause. 21 seconds. To the tourists, it was a ceremony. To Marcus, it was a promise. But in the crowd, one man was not watching with respect. He was watching with hatred. His eyes moved from the tomb of the unknown soldier to Marcus's face, then down to the uniform, then back to the color of his skin. And then he said it. Low enough to avoid the cameras. Loud enough for Marcus to hear. So this is who they let guard America now. A few people nearby froze. A father pulled his young son closer. An old veteran slowly lifted his head. Marcus did not answer. He did not blink. He took another step. The man smiled wider. You people wear the uniform now, he whispered. But that does not make this place yours. The words cut through the air like a blade. But Marcus Reed had been cut by words before. He had learned long ago that some men hated the sight of a black soldier standing tall more than they feared any weapon. So he kept walking. 21 steps. Turn. Pause. But then the man's right hand slipped inside his coat. And beneath the gray wool, Marcus saw the hard outline of a gun. The crowd did not know yet. The children did not know. The families did not know. But Marcus knew. This man had not come to Arlington to argue. He had come to turn sacred ground into a headline. And he had chosen the wrong tomb guard. Before we get into this story, tell us where you are watching from in the comments. And if you believe honor still matters, if you believe sacrifice should never be mocked, and if you believe every soldier deserves respect no matter the color of his skin, subscribe to Tomb Guard Honor. Because this is not just a story about a wanted fugitive who threatened the tomb of the unknown soldier. It is a story about a black tomb guard who stood silent in the face of hatred. A soldier who was insulted before he was attacked. A sacred place where one man tried to bring violence, racism, and fear. And the moment he learned that honor has no color. Sacrifice has no race. And Arlington is not protected by stone alone. It is protected by men and women who are willing to stand between hatred and the memory of the fallen. The morning at Arlington National Cemetery was cold, clear, and still. A pale autumn sun rested over the hills, casting soft light across the endless rows of white headstones. Each marker stood straight and silent, lined across the grass like a formation that would never break. Small American flags moved in the wind. Families walked slowly. Some carried flowers. Some carried photographs. Some carried grief so heavy they did not speak at all. At Arlington, silence was not empty. It had weight. It carried names. It carried folded flags. It carried the last words never spoken, the final letters never sent, and the empty chairs left behind at kitchen tables across America. Near the tomb of the unknown soldier, visitors gathered behind the rope. Tourists from Texas. A family from Ohio. A school group from Maryland. Several veterans wearing old caps with faded patches. And near the front stood a young black boy named Malik, holding a small American flag in one hand and his father's sleeve in the other. Malik was 7 years old. He did not fully understand the tomb yet. But he understood the man guarding it. The soldier was black like him. Tall, still, powerful. Every step was sharp enough to make the whole crowd listen. Malik looked up at his father and whispered, "Dad, is he a real soldier?" His father, Darius Cole, looked at the tomb guard and smiled softly. "Yes," Darius said. "A very real one. What is he doing?" "He is honoring soldiers who never came home." Malik looked back at the guard. The tomb guard reached the end of his path. He turned. He paused. Then he began again. 21 steps. Turn. Pause. 21 seconds. His name was Sergeant Marcus Reed. 32 years old. United States Army. A black tomb guard from Charleston, South Carolina. His uniform was flawless. His gloves were white. His shoes were polished so clean they reflected the stone beneath him. His rifle rested against his shoulder with perfect control. His sunglasses hid his eyes, but they could not hide the discipline in his posture. To most people watching, Marcus looked almost unreal, like a statue that had learned to breathe. But Marcus Reed was not a statue. He was a son, a soldier, a man who had buried his father under a folded flag. His father's name was Staff Sergeant Elijah Reed. Elijah had served his country for nearly 20 years. He had deployed 2 places his family only saw on maps. He had come home with scars he rarely explained and memories that sometimes woke him in the middle of the night. But he never taught Marcus to hate the country that had not always loved men who looked like them. Instead, Elijah taught him to stand. "When you wear the uniform," his father once told him, "some people will see the color of your skin before they see your service. Do not let that make you smaller. Let your discipline make their ignorance look weak." Marcus was 15 when he first heard those words. He was 17 when the flag came home without his father. At the funeral, he watched soldiers fold the flag with slow, perfect movements. He watched his mother receive it with trembling hands. He watched neighbors, officers, relatives, and strangers speak about honor, sacrifice, and courage. But what Marcus remembered most was the silence. The silence after the rifle volley. The silence when the flag touched his mother's lap. The silence of knowing his father had given everything and would never walk through the front door again. That silence became part of Marcus. Years later, when he earned the right to guard the tomb of the unknown soldier, he brought that silence with him. Not empty silence. Sacred silence. The kind that does not beg to be understood. The kind that does not need applause. The kind that stands when the world tries to make it kneel. That morning, Marcus walked his path with the same discipline he had carried through every inspection, every correction, every freezing morning, and every blistered night. 21 steps. Turn. Pause. 21 seconds. But Marcus was not only performing a ceremony. He was watching. A tomb guard sees more than people think. Marcus noticed the schoolteacher quietly reminding children to lower their phones. He noticed the elderly veteran with the Korean War cap leaning on a cane. He noticed the mother wiping tears from her face as she stared at the tomb. He noticed Malik in the front row, standing taller every time Marcus passed. And then he noticed the man in the gray coat. The man stood near the right side of the viewing area. Not too close at first. Not too far. He looked like a tourist if someone only glanced at him. Trimmed beard. Dark gloves. Polished shoes. A gray wool coat but tie. But his eyes were wrong. He did not look at the tomb the way others did. He did not look with respect. He did not look with sadness. He looked at it like an object, a target. Then he looked at Marcus, not at the uniform first, at his face, at his skin. Then he smiled. It was small, cold, ugly. Marcus had seen that smile before. In airports, in restaurants, in towns near military bases. On the faces of men who wanted to ask if he was really in charge. On the faces of strangers who thanked white soldiers beside him, then looked through him as if his uniform was borrowed. Marcus knew that kind of smile. It was the smile of a man who believed service looked only one way. But the gray-coated man was more than disrespectful. Marcus could feel it. There was calculation in him. A careful stillness. His right arm did not swing naturally. His eyes kept checking the security positions. He had no flowers, no camera around his neck, no guide map in his hand. He had not come to mourn. He had come to measure. Near the volunteer station, an older woman noticed him too. Her name was Evelyn Carter, 68 years old, retired Army nurse, Arlington volunteer. Her hair was silver, tucked beneath a volunteer cap. A small Army nurse pin rested on her jacket. She moved slowly now, but her eyes still carried the sharpness of someone who had spent years reading pain, panic, and danger before other people could name them. Evelyn had seen the gray-coated man earlier that morning. He had come to her information table with polite questions and dead eyes. When is the guard alone? Where do security officers stand during the ceremony? Are visitors searched before entering this area? Do cameras cover the entire plaza? He had asked like a curious visitor. But Evelyn had served too long to confuse curiosity with planning. Now, as she watched him drift closer to the barrier, she felt the same cold warning in her stomach that she had felt years ago in field hospitals, right before the wounded started coming in. Something was wrong. And Sergeant Marcus Reed knew it too. The man in the gray coat was not the person his passport said he was. The passport identified him as Adrian Voss, a businessman from Eastern Europe visiting Washington for a conference. That name was false. So was the conference. So was nearly everything about him. In intelligence files, he had been called Victor Soren. In another country, he had used the name Anton Veckler. In a federal alert buried deep inside a system most people would never see, he was listed as a wanted fugitive connected to illegal arms networks, extremist groups, and 2 violent attacks overseas. No one in the crowd knew that. To them, he was just another visitor. But Marcus Reed knew what danger looked like even before it introduced itself. The man's real name did not matter yet. His intent did. He had come to Arlington because he understood symbols. He understood that some places were bigger than the stone they were built from. A flag was not just fabric. A uniform was not just cloth. A tomb was not just marble. And the tomb of the unknown soldier was not just a monument. It was memory made visible. It was a promise carved into stone. It was America saying that even when a soldier's name was lost, his sacrifice would not be. That was why the man had chosen it. Not because it was easy. Because it was sacred. He wanted fear at the center of reverence. He wanted screams where silence belonged. He wanted cameras to capture a black tomb guard breaking, falling, or reacting in anger. He wanted a picture that could travel across the world before truth had a chance to catch up. A symbol of American weakness. A symbol of division. A symbol of hatred standing over honor. And when he saw Marcus Reed on duty, his plan found another layer. Race. The man hated symbols. But he especially hated this one. A black soldier standing at one of America's most sacred posts. A black man guarding the memory of all fallen soldiers. A black tomb guard whose discipline made him impossible to dismiss. That sight offended something small and wrought inside him. He stepped closer to the rope. Marcus continued his steps. 21. Turn. Pause. 21 seconds. Evelyn moved near the volunteer table and let her hand drift beneath it. There was an emergency butt mounted there for situations no one wanted to imagine. She did not press it yet. She watched. The man in the gray coat leaned slightly toward another tourist, a middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap. "Interesting choice, isn't it?" he said. The tourist frowned. "What?" The gray-coated man nodded toward Marcus. For this place, the tourist's face hardened. "You should watch your mouth," the man smiled. "I am only making an observation." Darius Cole heard enough to pull Malik a little closer. Malik looked confused. "What did he say, Dad?" "Nothing worth repeating," Darius said. But Marcus heard it. Every word. The insult was not loud. It was not dramatic. That made it worse. It was the kind of racism that tried to hide behind a question. The kind that pretended to be tradition. The kind that said, "I am only asking," while meaning, "You do not belong." Marcus had heard that language all his life. He heard it when a man at an airport once asked if he was really military or just wearing the jacket. He heard it when a restaurant host called every white officer sir and called him buddy. He heard it when a stranger looked at his dress uniform and asked, "Who helped you get that?" He heard it in the silence after he walked into rooms where no one expected him to lead. But at the tomb, the words had a different weight. Because this was not about Marcus alone. This was about every black soldier who had served a country that sometimes questioned his place while still asking for his blood. It was about his father. His grandfather. The men who fought in uniforms abroad and returned home to locked doors, suspicious eyes, and backhanded respect. It was about the young boy in the crowd watching him. Malik. Marcus could feel the boy's eyes on him. That mattered. More than the insult. More than the man. Because a child was learning something in that moment. Either he would learn that hatred could make a soldier shrink, or he would learn that dignity could stand taller than hate. Marcus chose the second. He kept walking. The man in the gray coat stepped closer. "You hear me, guard," he said quietly. Marcus reached the end of his path. Turned. Paused. The man's smile sharpened. "They dress you well," he said. "I will give them that." Arthur Malloy, the elderly veteran with the cane, lifted his head. "Enough," Arthur said. The man glanced at him. What was that? Arthur's old hand tight around the cane. "I said enough." The gray-coated man looked him over with amusement. Another old soldier defending the performance. Arthur's voice was rough. "That performance means more than you ever will." A few people in the crowd murmured in agreement. The man seemed pleased. He wanted the tension to grow. He wanted eyes on him now. Fear worked better when it had an audience. Evelyn finally pressed the emergency button. Once, quietly. No siren sounded. No alarm flashed. But somewhere behind the calm public face of Arlington, a silent signal began moving through security channels. Marcus saw Evelyn's hand return from beneath the table. Good. Help was coming. But it would not arrive fast enough if the man drew the weapon Marcus now felt cert was inside his coat. The gray-coated man turned back toward Marcus. You stand here for a country that never truly wanted men like you, he said. This time more people heard it. The words moved through the crowd like a slap. Darius Cole's face tightened. Malik looked up at him. The schoolteacher pulled her students back. Evelyn whispered, "Dear God." Marcus stood still in his pause. The words reached him, entered him, then found no place to stay. Because Marcus knew something the man did not. The tomb did not ask a soldier's color before honoring his sacrifice. The fallen did not become less American because of the skin they lived in. And no man with hatred in his mouth had the authority to decide who belonged on sacred ground. The gray-coated man's right hand slipped deeper into his coat. His shoulder lifted. The fabric pulled tight around something hard. Arthur Malloy saw it. Evelyn saw it. Marcus saw it first. The crowd still did not understand. The man took one final step toward the rope. His voice dropped low. Let us see how brave America's new symbol really is. Marcus's body changed. Not enough for the crowd to notice. Enough for a trained man to know the ceremony had become a battlefield. His breathing settled. His grip adjusted. His feet found the stone. His mind reduced the world to distance, angle, weapon, crowd, child, tomb. The man's hand began to come out. And Sergeant Marcus Reed, Black Tomb Guard, son of a fallen soldier, guardian of the unknown dead, understood that the next 3 seconds would decide everything. Adrian Volk's hand remained inside his coat. Not long enough for the crowd to understand. Long enough for Marcus Reed to know. There are moments when danger announces itself with noise. A shout, a scream, a crash of glass, the sudden scramble of feet. This was not one of those moments. This danger came quietly. It came through the way Adrian's elbow angled inward, through the way his shoulders settled before action, through the way his eyes stopped roaming and fixed completely on Marcus. A man about to run looks at exits. A man about to attack looks at his target. Marcus kept walking. 21 steps. Pause. Turn. The sound of his heels striking the stone felt louder now, not because it had changed, but because the rest of the plaza had grown still around it. Evelyn Carter stood near the volunteer station, her fingers pressed lightly against the emergency button beneath the counter. She had already triggered the silent alarm. She knew that. But knowing help was coming did not make the seconds easier. Seconds could stretch. Seconds could kill. The schoolchildren beside her had gone quiet. One boy in a blue jacket clutched a notebook against his chest. A girl with braids stared at Adrian's coat without understanding why her stomach had started to feel strange. Their teacher, Ms. Palmer, sensed the shift too. She did not know what was happening, but she knew enough to move her body between the children and the man in the gray coat. Everyone stay close, she whispered. Across the viewing area, the elderly Korean War veteran tightened his grip on his cane. His name was Arthur Malloy. 86 years old. Bad hip. Weak left knee. But his eyes were still sharp enough to read a room, and his memories were still crowded with men who had smiled before they fired. Arthur looked at Adrian, then at Marcus, then at the crowd of children. He did not move toward the man. He was not foolish. But he shifted his cane into his right hand and placed his feet the way old soldiers do, when the body remembers war even after the joints have forgot youth. Near the front, the young black boy with the flag looked up at his father. Dad, his father Darius Cole, placed one steady hand on the boy's shoulder. Stay behind me, Malik. The boy's name was Malik. 7 years old. Old enough to know when adults were afraid. Too young to understand why. He looked back at Marcus, still walking. Still silent, still perfect in his dark blue uniform. To Malik, the tomb guard looked calm. That helped. A little. Adrian saw it all. He saw the schoolteacher pulling the children back. He saw the veteran's cane change hands. He saw Evelyn's face harden. He saw Darius shield his son. And he smiled. Not because he had been missed. Because he had been noticed. That was the first part of his plan. Fear had to begin before violence. Fear needed time to spread. A panicked crowd made a better image than an unsuspecting one. A nervous silence became a fuse. Adrian wanted the plaza to feel him before it saw him. He stepped closer to the rope. Do they tell you what you are guarding? He asked Marcus. His voice was louder now. Still not a shout, but clear enough that the first 2 rows heard him. Marcus did not answer. Adrian tilted his head. Do they tell you this marble is supposed to mean strength? No response. Or do they only tell you to walk? The insult moved through the crowd like cold water. A few people looked away, embarrassed by the ugliness of it. Others looked straight at Adrian, anger replacing confusion. Marcus heard every word. He also heard what was beneath them. The bait. The old poison dressed as commentary. Adrian was not simply mocking the ceremony. He was trying to make Marcus step out of it. Trying to make the black soldier become visibly angry. Trying to make the crowd see discipline crack. Marcus would not give him that. His father had taught him better. His training had demanded more. That tomb deserved all of him. Not his anger. His control. Adrian's right hand shifted again. This time, Evelyn saw the fabric of his coat pull tight around something hard. Her throat dried. She whispered, "Oh God." Marcus reached the end of the mat. Turned. Paused. His eyes, hidden behind dark lenses, moved just enough to mark the distance. Adrian was 12 feet beyond the rope. Too close to that children. Too far for the first security officer to reach before the hand cleared the coat. Marcus's rifle was ceremonial, but Marcus was not. He calculated the line between duty and action. The tomb guard's silence was sacred. But the protection of life was older than ceremony. Adrian took another half step forward. Arthur Malloy spoke then, his old voice rough but steady. Son, step back. Adrian turned his head slightly. Son, the word came out amused. Arthur held his ground. You heard me. Adrian looked the old veteran up and down. A relic defending a relic, Darius Cole's jaw tight. Evelyn quietly moved the closest children farther behind her. Marcus still did not move outside the rhythm of his watch. But his body had changed. Only a soldier would have seen it. The slightest lowering of center. The smallest adjustment of grip. The breath settling deep. The world narrowing into one man, one hand, one possible weapon. Adrian looked back at Marcus. There he is, he said softly. Not just a statue after all. Then he did something that made every warning in Marcus's body become certainty. Adrian lifted his right shoulder. The coat opened, and a flash of dark metal appeared beneath the gray wool. The first scream did not come when the weapon appeared. It came half a second later. That is how shock works. The mind sees what it cannot accept, then stumbles before sound catches up. A black pistol emerged from Adrian Volk's coat, held low at his side, partly hidden by his body. Not pointed yet. Not fully raised. But visible enough. The mother beside the school group gasped. Mess. Palmer pulled two children behind her so hard one of them dropped his notebook. Evelyn stepped in front of the nearest child, both hands spread slightly as if her old body could become a wall. Arthur Malloy's cane lifted an inch off the stone. Darius Cole pushed Malik behind him. Do not move, he whispered. Malik's flag slipped from his hand and fell against his shoe. Marcus Reed stopped. Not dramatically. Not with a shout. He stopped the way a machine stops when the command is absolute. His heel came down. His shoulders squared. His rifle remained in ceremonial position. For one heartbeat, the plaza held its breath. Adrian smiled at him. There, he said. Now everyone sees the truth. The pistol was compact, dark, and fitted with modifications no ordinary tourist would carry. Marcus saw the extended, threaded barrel. The altered sights. The custom grip worn smooth at the edges. He could not know every detail from that distance, but he knew enough. This was not a showpiece. This weapon had been used. Adrian raised it slowly, making sure the crowd saw. A woman whimpered. A man whispered, "Gun," then the word traveled. "Gun, he has a gun, get down." The crowd began to tremble at the edges. Not stampede, not yet, but sway. Bodies pressing away from the center of danger. Adrian liked that. Marcus could see it in his face. The man did not simply want to kill. He wanted the crowd to feel helpless before he did anything. He wanted to own the silence. He wanted the tomb to become a theater for his message. Adrian lifted the pistol higher, aiming not directly at Marcus yet, but near him. Close enough. Do you know why I chose this place? Adrian asked. Marcus did not answer. You build monuments because you are terrified of forgetting what you used to be. His finger rested along the frame of the weapon. Trained, controlled, not amateur. Marcus noticed that too. You stand here guarding ghosts, Adrian continued, while your country rots behind you. Divided, awake, ashamed of itself. And now they place you here as proof of what? Progress. The word was sharp. The crowd heard it. So did Malik. Darius felt his son press against the back of his coat. Marcus felt the insult pass by him and strike the child behind the rope. That hurt more than Adrian could have known. Still, Marcus did not break. Adrian lifted the pistol another inch. Say something, he said. Defend it. Marcus remained still. The silence made Adrian's eyes harden. He wanted words. He wanted fear. He wanted Marcus to become part of the performance. But Marcus was not there to perform for him. He was there to guard. The first security officer appeared at the far edge of the plaza, one hand near his radio, moving carefully. Adrian saw him immediately. Stop, Adrian snapped. The officer froze. Adrian turned the pistol slightly toward the crowd. A scream broke loose. Marcus's voice cut through the plaza for the first time. Look at me, it was not loud. But it carried. Adrian's eyes returned to him. Marcus stood straight, calm, controlled. Not them, Marcus said. Me, Adrian smiled. At last, Marcus kept his tone even. You came here for the guard. So look at the guard. The words did exactly what Marcus needed. They pulled Adrian's attention back. Away from the children. Away from Evelyn. Away from the shifting crowd. Back to the one man on the plaza trained enough to carry that attention. Adrian took one step closer. You think you are brave? No, Marcus said. The answer caught Adrian off guard. Marcus continued, I think you are close to making the last mistake of your life. A murmur moved through the crowd. Adrian's smile vanished. His pride did not like being touched. His hand tightened around the pistol grip. Careful, he said. Marcus did not move. You are holding a modified 9mm pistol in a restricted memorial area in front of children, Marcus said. You triggered a silent alarm the moment you exposed the weapon. Security is already sealing the exits. Every camera on this plaza has your face. Adrian's eyes flicked just once toward the cameras. It was quick, but Marcus saw it. Good. Fear had entered the man's calculations. Not enough to stop him. Enough to make him angry. Adrian raised the pistol toward Marcus. The crowd froze. Evelyn closed her hand around a child's shoulder. Arthur whispered a prayer. Malik buried his face against his father's back. Marcus saw the barrel align. He saw Adrian's elbow settle. He saw the finger begin to move from the frame toward the trigger. Time slowed. Not because time cared. Because training did. Marcus saw only what mattered. Distance, grip, angle, trigger discipline breaking. The nearest child. The veteran. The rope. The stone. The tomb behind him. His father's voice somewhere in memory. Stand so well that their lie collapses on its own. But sometimes standing was not enough. Sometimes honor had to move. Marcus Reed moved before the crowd understood movement had begun. 1 second he was still. The next, the ceremonial image shattered into controlled violence. His left foot drove off the stone. His body cut the distance at an angle, not straight forward, because straight lines feed bullets. His white-gloved hand shot toward the pistol, fingers closing over the slide with brutal precision. Adrian fired. Or tried to. The weapon snapped uselessly under Marcus's grip, the slide trapped before it could cycle. The shot cracked half-formed, the round driven offline as Marcus rotated the barrel away from the crowd and down toward the stone. A burst of sound exploded across the plaza. Not a clean gunshot. A trapped, broken blast. People screamed, but no one fell. Marcus twisted. Adrian's wrist folded against the pressure. The fugitive's face changed from triumph to shock. He had expected fear. He had expected hesitation. He had not expected the tomb guard too close distance, like a ranger in a doorway. Marcus stepped inside the weapon arm, denying Adrian space. His right forearm struck the inside of Adrian's elbow, collapsing the structure of the grip. The pistol came loose for half a breath. That was all Marcus needed. He stripped it free. Magazine release. The loaded magazine dropped into Marcus's palm. Slide back. Chambered round ejected, spinning bright in the cold sunlight before pinging against the stone. Safety engaged. Weapon controlled. 3 seconds. Maybe less. Later, people would argue about what they had seen. Some swore Marcus had moved like a shadow. Others said the pistol seemed to disappear from Adrian's hand by magic. Arthur Malloy would tell reporters that boy moved the way trained men move when there's no room left for mistakes, but in the moment there was no time to admire anything. Because Adrian was not done. Humiliation can make a dangerous man more dangerous. He lunged with his left hand, reaching under his coat again. Marcus saw the movement. Secondary weapon. Knife maybe. Small firearm maybe. It did not matter. Marcus drove his shoulder into Adrian's chest, turning him away from the crowd. Adrian stumbled backward but stayed on his feet, snarling through clenched teeth. You think this changes anything? Adrian spat. Marcus's answer was calm. It changes your options, Adrian swung. Not wild. Trained. A short hook aimed at Marcus's jaw. Marcus slipped it by inches and stepped inside again. He used the disabled pistol's grip as a hard control point against Adrian's forearm, not striking for anger, but for compliance. Adrian resisted. So Marcus finished it. One sharp movement. The rear sight of the pistol came down across the bridge of Adrian's nose. A crack cut through the plaza. Adrian's body folded halfway. Blood spilled instantly over his mouth and onto the front of his gray coat. He staggered, both hands rising toward his face. My nose, he choked. Marcus kept the pistol secure and put himself between Adrian and the crowd. You threat the tomb, Marcus said. The nose is incidental, the line landed cold. Even through fear, Arthur Malloy almost smiled. The first security officer rushed in from the side, but Marcus lifted one hand slightly. Secondary search, he said. Right in her coat, the officer adjusted at once. A second security officer came in low and fast, pulling Adrian's arms behind him. Adrian tried to twist away, but the broken nose had stolen his balance and his pride. He hit the ground on one knee. Then both. Blood spotted the stone. Evelyn turned the children away. Eyes on me, she told them. Look at me, not him, MS. Palmer was crying now, though she did not seem to know it. Darius kept Malik behind him, one hand over the boy's ear. The sirens began in the distance. Faint at first, then growing. Adrian laughed through blood. You think you stopped something, he said. Marcus looked down at him. No, he said. I stopped you. Security pulled a compact folding blade from Adrian's inner coat. Then a second magazine. Then a small phone wrapped in black tape. The officer's face hardened. Jesus, Marcus handed over the cleared pistol, grip first, with the muzzle pointed safely away. Modified barrel. Custom trigger. At least one chambered round, ejected near the left edge of the path. Mark it before the crowd moves. The officer blinked once at the precision of the report. Then nodded. Yes, Sergeant. Adrian looked up from his knees, blood dripping down his chin. You people love your little titles. He hissed. Marcus stepped closer. Not angry. Not loud. Just close enough for Adrian to hear every word. You came here thinking the uniform was decoration. You saw my face and thought discipline was weakness. You mistook silence for permission. Adrian stared at him. Marcus's voice lowered. This is the tomb of the unknown soldier. Every man and woman honored here gave more than your hatred could ever understand. The sirens reached the gates. Marcus straightened. And I told you, he said. You were close to making the last mistake of your life. Part 8. The name behind the passport. Metropolitan Police arrived first. Then federal officers. Then men in plain suits whose eyes moved over the scene faster than their mouths. The plaza around the tomb became controlled chaos. Visitors were guided back. The schoolchildren were moved behind a secure line. Paramedics checked a woman who had nearly fainted. Security officers marked their ejected round with a small evidence cone. Another team photographed the blood on the stone before cleaning could begin. Through it all, Marcus Reed stood near the tomb. Not pacing, not speaking unless asked, not accepting praise. His uniform remained perfect except for one smear of blood across the edge of his left glove. It was not his. He noticed it only once, then looked away. Adrian Volk sat against a security barrier with his hands cuffed behind him. A paramedic held gauze to his broken nose while he glared at everyone with the fury of a man whose myth had collapsed in public. A detective named Luis Ramirez approached Marcus with a notebook in hand. Sergeant Reed, yes, I need a quick statement before the formal one. You saw the weapon first. Marcus looked toward Evelyn. Mrs. Carter reported suspicious behavior before the draw. She triggered the silent alarm. I confirmed a probable concealed weapon based on his movement and coat line. Detective Ramirez glanced at Evelyn, who was sitting nearby with a blanket around her shoulders and 3 schoolchildren refusing to leave her side. She may have saved lives, Marcus said. Ramirez wrote that down. And the weapon, modified 9mm pistol. Threaded barrel. Custom trigger. Extended magazine removed. 1 round was chambered and ejected during disarm. Suspect also carried a folding blade and spare magazine. Ramirez looked up. You got all that while he was pointing it at you. Marcus's face did not change. Yes, the detective studied him for a second. Then gave a short nod. Remind me never to play cards with you. An officer hurried over carrying a tablet. Detective, he said, slightly out of breath. Facial recognition hit. Passport says Adrian Volk, but that's false. Real name may be Nikolai Sorin. International alert. Weapons trafficking, extremist networks. Suspected involvement in 2 embassy attacks overseas. Ramirez's expression darkened. Interpol already notified. Federal wants him transferred after medical. Adrian heard enough to smile through the gauze. You have no idea what you are touching. Ramirez turned. I know you're bleeding on federal property in handcuffs. Adrian's eyes moved to Marcus. You think you are a hero now? Marcus did not answer. That seemed to bother Adrian more than any insult would have. He tried again. They will use you. Put your face on screens. Make you proof that the system still works. Marcus looked at him then. No, Adrian's brow tight. Marcus said, I will return to my post. That is all. For the first time, Adrian looked uncertain. He understood violence. He understood fear. He understood ego. He did not understand a man who had just stopped an attack and wanted nothing from it. That made Marcus unreadable to him. And what Adrian could not read, he could not control. Nearby, Evelyn Carter stood slowly despite the paramedic telling her to rest. She walked toward Marcus, her volunteer cap crooked, her face pale but determined. Sergeant Reed, she said. Marcus turned to her. Ma'am, I should have said something sooner. You said it in time, her eyes filled. My husband is buried here, she said. Section 60. He was a medic. He always said the quiet ones are the ones you trust when the world breaks. Marcus softened just slightly. He sounds like a good man. He was. Evelyn looked toward Adrian, then back at Marcus. You honored him today. Marcus's voice was low. That is what I am here to do. Arthur Malloy approached next, leaning heavily on his cane. Darius Cole tried to stop him. Sir, maybe sit down. Arthur waved him off. I have been sitting long enough. He stopped in front of Marcus and lifted a trembling hand in salute. The old veteran's fingers shook. His eyes did not. Korea, Arthur said. 2nd Infantry. Marcus returned the salute with perfect form. Thank you for your service, sir. Arthur looked him over. Your father served. Marcus paused. Yes, sir, thought so, Arthur said. You carry it like inheritance. The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. For a moment, he saw his father's boots by the door. The folded flag. His mother's hands. Then the moment passed. Arthur nodded toward the blood being cleaned from the stone. That man came here thinking hate made him strong. Marcus said nothing. Arthur's mouth tight. Funny thing about hate. It always mistakes restraint for fear. Marcus looked at Adrian being lifted to his feet by officers. Yes, sir. Malik stepped out from behind his father then. Small, nervous, still holding the little flag he had dropped earlier. Darius touched his shoulder. You don't have to. Malik swallowed, then looked at Marcus. Were you scared? Darius closed his eyes briefly, embarrassed. But Marcus took the question seriously. He lowered himself just enough to meet the boy's eyes without breaking dignity. Yes, Marcus said. Malik blinked. You were. Courage is not the same as not being scared, Marcus said. Courage is doing your duty while fear is standing there with you. Malik looked at the tomb. Then back at Marcus. That man said bad things, yes, about America, yes. Malik hesitated. And about you. Marcus did not lie to him. Yes, the boy's fingers tight around the flag. Marcus said, but his words did not decide who I am. And they do not decide who you are. Darius looked away, swallowing hard. Malik nodded slowly, as if placing the words somewhere safe inside himself. Okay, he whispered. Then he stood a little straighter. The ceremony had been interrupted. The plaza had been marked. The crowd had been shaken. But the tomb remained. White marble, silent, untouched by Adrian Volk's hatred. That was what Marcus noticed most as the officers led the fugitive away. Adrian shouted once as they moved him toward the waiting vehicle. This is not over, no one answered. Not Marcus, not the police, not the veterans, not the crowd. The threat fell flat in the open air, small against the weight of Arlington. Some men believe volume makes meaning. Arlington teaches otherwise. After the area was cleared and secured, Colonel Denise Harper arrived from the Old Guard command staff. She was a composed woman in her 50s, with silver threaded through her dark hair and eyes that missed very little. She listened to the first reports. She spoke with security. She checked on the civilians. Then she approached Marcus. Sergeant Reed, Ma'am, medical wants to look at your hand. Marcus glanced at the glove. The blood smear had dried at the seam. It is not mine, I know, she said. They still want to look, yes, Ma'am, but neither of them moved yet. Both looked toward the tomb. The sacred rhythm had been broken. Not by Marcus. Not by the crowd. By the man who had come there intending to turn memory into fear. Colonel Harper's voice softened. You understand what they are going to ask? Yes, ma'am. Statements. Reports. Interviews if command approves. Federal review. Yes, ma'am. She studied him. You saved lives today. Marcus kept his eyes forward. Mrs. Carter triggered the alarm. Security sealed the perimeter. The crowd stayed controlled. That is not what I said. Marcus said nothing. Colonel Harper let the silence stand a moment. Then she said, your father would be proud. Marcus's jaw moved once. Barely. Most people would not have seen it. Colonel Harper did. She had known Elijah Reed years ago. Not well, but enough to understand why the words mattered. Marcus looked at the tomb. My father used to say the uniform is not heavy until someone needs it to be. Colonel Harper nodded. He was right. A maintenance team had finished cleaning the stone where Adrian's blood had fallen. Evidence markers remained along the edge, but the central path was clear. The crowd, now farther back, stood waiting. No one had asked them to remain. They did anyway. The school children, the veterans, the families, the tourists who had come expecting a ceremony and witnessed a test. Evelyn Carter stood with MS. Palmer and the children. Arthur Malloy leaned on his cane. Darius Cole held Malik's hand. The boy still clutched his flag. A new guard rotation could have been called. No one would have blamed Marcus. The incident alone would have been enough. But Marcus knew what the crowd needed now. Not a speech. Not an explanation. Not a declaration of victory. They needed the ritual restored. They needed to see that hatred had interrupted the watch, but had not ended it. Marcus stepped away briefly to remove the stained glove. A clean one was brought. He pulled it on finger by finger. Slowly, carefully, ceremonially. Then he checked his uniform. Cab, collar, buttons, rifle, shows. No wasted motion. No visible tremor. Colonel Harper watched him. You are sure? Marcus looked at her. Yes, ma'am. He returned to the mat before the tomb. The plaza became completely silent. Not fearful now. Reverent. Marcus took his position. For 1 second he stood still, the rifle at his shoulder, the tomb before him, the living behind him, the dead beneath the memory of the stone. He thought of his father, Staff Sergeant Elijah Reed. He thought of the folded flag. He thought of the words Adrian had tried to throw at him. So this is what they choose now. Marcus let the words pass through him and die there. Then he stepped forward. 1, 2, 3. The sound of his heel striking the stone returned. 21 steps. Pause. Turn. 21 seconds. Turn again. The crowd watched as if they were seeing the ceremony for the first time. Evelyn Carter began to cry quietly. Arthur Malloy saluted. Darius Cole placed his hand over his heart. Malik copied him. The school children stood straighter. Even the tourists who had been filming lowered their phones. Because something had become clear to everyone present. The tomb guard's strength had never been in the rifle. Not really. It had never been in the uniform alone. It had never been in the silence by itself. The strength was in the choice. To stand. To watch. To protect. To act when action was required. And then, when the danger had passed, to return to the watch without asking the world to applaud. Marcus Reed walked his steps. The tomb remained guarded. And the man who had come to make America look weak had been carried away bleeding, disarmed, and forgot by the very crowd he wanted to terrify. But Marcus knew the story was not finished. Not yet, because what happened at Arlington that morning would move beyond the plaza. Into newsrooms, into homes, into the mind of a young boy named Malik, into the memory of every veteran who had watched, and into the life of a black tomb guard who had just become a symbol he had never asked to be. The steps continued. 21. Turn. Pause. And with every movement, Marcus made the same promise the tomb guards had always made. The watch would not break. The fallen would not be abandoned. And no hatred, no weapon, no man with a borrowed name and a violent plan would decide what this sacred ground meant. The story did not end when the fugitive was taken away. For the crowd, the danger had passed. For the police, the suspect was in custody. For the federal agents, their investigation had only begun. But for Malik Cole, the 7-year-old boy standing behind his father with a small American flag in his hand, something had changed in a way he could not explain. He had seen a man hate Sergeant Marcus Reed. Not because Marcus had done something wrong. Not because Marcus had spoken badly. Not because Marcus had threatened anyone. The man had hated him before Marcus ever moved. He had hated him while Marcus was standing straight, doing his duty, guarding the tomb. And Malik had heard enough to understand that the hatred had something to do with skin. His skin. Marcus's skin. His father's skin. That was the part that stayed with him. Darius Cole felt his son's hand trembling inside his own. He looked down. "You okay, buddy?" Malik did not answer right away. His eyes stayed on Marcus, who was already walking again. 21 steps. Turn. Pause. 21 seconds. "Dad," Malik whispered, "why did that man say Sergeant Reed should not be here?" Darius breathed in slowly. He had known this question would come one day. He had hoped it would not come at Arlington. Not in front of the tomb. Not with the echo of a gunshot still living somewhere inside his child's chest. He knelt beside Malik and turned him gently away from the crowd. "Some people," Darius said carefully, "think they get to decide who belongs. They look at a person's skin or name or where their family came from, and they make up a story before they know the truth." Malik looked confused. "But Sergeant Reed is a soldier, yes, and he protected everyone, yes, then why did the man not see that?" Darius looked toward the path where Marcus continued his watch. "Because hatred makes people blind." Malik's face tightened. Darius placed a hand on his shoulder. "But listen to me. That man was wrong before he pulled the gun. He was wrong when he opened his mouth. He was wrong when he looked at Sergeant Reed and thought he saw less than a man." Malik looked back at Marcus. "He did not get scared." Darius shook his head. "He was scared." Malik turned quickly. "He was, probably," Darius said. "But courage does not mean you feel nothing. It means you do what is right even when fear is standing next to you." Malik watched Marcus reach the end of his path. The tomb guard turned. Paused. Still perfect. Still calm. Still there. "Can I write him a letter?" Malik asked. Darius swallowed. "Yes," he said. "I think that would mean a lot." Across the plaza, Evelyn Carter sat on a folding chair while a paramedic checked her blood pressure. She kept brushing him away. I am fine, she insisted. The paramedic looked unconvinced. You just stood between children and a gunman. I was an army nurse, Evelyn said. This is not my first stubborn man with a weapon. The paramedic paused. Then quietly continued checking her pulse. Arthur Malloy stood nearby, leaning on his cane. His eyes were red, though he would have denied crying if anyone asked. He watched Marcus walk. I have seen a lot of soldiers, Arthur said. Evelyn looked up. So have I. That one, Arthur said, nodding toward Marcus, is made of the old stuff. Evelyn smiled faintly. No, she said. He is made of tomorrow, too. Arthur looked at her. Evelyn's eyes shifted toward Malik. Arthur followed her gaze. The boy was standing straighter now, flag pressed against his chest. Arthur nodded slowly. Yes, he said. I suppose he is. By late afternoon, the crowd had changed. Some visitors left quietly, shaken by what they had witnessed. Others stayed, not because they wanted drama, not because they wanted another story to tell. They stayed because the ceremony meant something different now. Before the attack, some had watched the tomb guard with curiosity. Afterward, they watched with reverence. Every step Marcus took felt like an answer. Not loud, not angry, not political. An answer made of discipline. The man in the gray coat had tried to turn the tomb into a wound. Marcus had turned the watch into a lesson. And for Malik, that lesson had a face. A black soldier. Silent, strong, unbroken. By evening, the first news reports appeared. At first, they were cautious. Security incident at Arlington National Cemetery. Suspect arrested near tomb of the unknown soldier. Tomb guard disarms armed man. Then more details came out. The suspect was not an ordinary visitor. The passport was fake. The name was false. The man was wanted internationally. Authorities believed he had entered the United States under a stolen identity. He had researched ceremonial schedules. He had asked about camera locations. He had carried a modified handgun, a folding blade, spare ammunition, and an encrypted recording device. By night, the story had spread across the country. But what truly caught the public's attention was not only the weapon. It was the video. Not the fugitive's video. A tourist had captured part of the confrontation from behind the crowd. The footage was shaky. People were whispering. The camera dipped when someone gasped. But the audio was clear enough. The man's voice could be heard insulting the tomb. Then insulting Marcus. Then mocking their idea of a black soldier standing guard at America's most sacred military site. The clip froze on Marcus. Standing still. Face unreadable. Uniform perfect. Then the gun appeared. Then Marcus moved. The internet replayed the same 3 seconds again and again. The flash of white glove. The angle of his body. The weapon forced away from the children. The magazine dropping free. The chambered round spinning out. The fugitive on the ground. And Marcus's voice, calm and cold. You mistook hate for strength. The sentence traveled faster than the official statement. Veterans shared it. Military families shared it. Teachers shared it. Pastors quoted it. Mothers sent it to sons. Fathers sent it to daughters. Some people called Marcus a hero. Some called him a symbol. Some called him proof that discipline still mattered. But Marcus Reed did not watch the clips. He did not give an interview that night. He did not write a post. He did not stand in front of cameras. After the formal statements, medical check, and command review, he returned home to a small apartment outside Washington, removed his uniform with the same care he used every day, and placed his gloves on the dresser. For a long time he stood there in silence. Then he opened the drawer where he kept his father's photograph. Staff Sergeant Elijah Reed smiled from a picture taken before Marcus was old enough to understand war. His father stood in uniform, one arm around Marcus's mother, the other resting on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus touched the edge of the frame. "They saw me today, Dad," he said quietly. His voice did not break, but something under it did. Not because he had been afraid of dying. Marcus had made peace with that possibility the first day he put on a uniform. What hurt was different. It was the sound of Malik asking why. It was the look on the boy's face when hatred entered a place that was supposed to teach honor. It was the knowledge that even at the tomb, even on sacred ground, even in front of the dead, a man had looked at a black soldier and tried to make him smaller. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed. His hand ached. The bandage felt tight across his knuckles. For the first time all day, he let himself feel the weight of it. Not weakness. Wait, there is a difference. The next morning, Colonel Denise Harper called him into her office. She stood by the window, holding a folder thick with printed reports. "You are cleared," she said. Marcus stood at attention. "Yes, ma'am, the review confirms your actions were necessary, controlled, and consistent with protection of life under immediate threat. Yes, ma'am." She closed the folder. "The federal investigation is still ongoing. They believe Soren intended to release edited footage internationally. The racial remarks were part of the provocation strategy." Marcus said nothing. Colonel Harper studied him. "You knew that already?" "Yes, ma'am." "He wanted you angry?" "Yes, ma'am." "He wanted the country to watch a black tomb guard lose control." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. "Yes, ma'am, but you did not." "No, ma'am." Colonel Harper leaned forward. "Marcus, listen to me. There are people who will try to make this story only about the weapon. There are others who will make it only about race. The truth is that it was both. He brought a gun to the tomb and he brought hatred with it." Marcus looked at her. She continued. "You stopped the gun. But you also refused the hatred." That sentence stayed with him. Later that day, a letter arrived through command. It was writ in pencil on lined paper. The handwriting was careful, uneven, and large. Marcus opened it in the quiet of the office. "Dear Sergeant Reed, my name is Malik. I was the boy with the flag at the tomb. The bad man said you did not belong there. My dad said he was wrong. I think he was wrong too. You looked brave. My dad said brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do the right thing anyway. Thank you for protecting us. Thank you for guarding the soldiers. When I grow up, I want to stand tall like you." From Malik Cole. Marcus read it once. Then again. Then a third time. He folded the letter carefully and placed it inside his breast pocket. That evening, when he returned to his apartment, he put the letter beside his father's photograph. For the first time since their attack, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The fugitive had wanted to create fear. But a child had taken something else from that day. not fear. Courage. Weeks passed. Their investigation widened. Federal authorities searched hotel rooms, storage lockers, encrypted phones, and accounts tied to false names. They found maps, schedules, photos of that tomb, notes about crowd size, notes about camera angles, notes about Marcus. Not Marcus Reed by name at first. The notes referred to him as the Black Guard, then in another file. Symbol target, the phrase made Colonel Harper's stomach turn when she read it. Marcus read it in silence. He had known. Still, seeing the words printed made something colder settle in him. The man had not simply hated him in the moment. He had selected him. The prosecution moved quickly. Victor Sorin faced charges related to attempted murder, terrorism-related activity, illegal possession of weapons, false identity documents, and threats on federal property. But before the trial, there was a formal hearing. Families who had been present at Arlington were allowed to submit statements. Evelyn Carter wrote one. Arthur Malloy wrote one. Darius Cole wrote one on behalf of Malik. Marcus did not want to speak. He preferred reports. Facts. Statements without emotion. But Colonel Harper asked him once. "Are you sure?" Marcus looked at the paper in front of him. "I know what happened, yes," she said. "But others need to know what it meant," so Marcus wrote. Not a speech. Not a performance. A statement. When the day came, the courtroom was crowded. Sorin sat at the defense table with the bridge of his nose still slightly crooked. The swelling had gone down, but the mark remained. It made him look less like the polished visitor who had entered Arlington, and more like what he was, a man whose violence had finally met consequence. He did not look at Evelyn. He did not look at Arthur. He did not look at Darius. But he looked at Marcus. And smiled. Marcus did not return it. When the prosecutor described their attack, the courtroom listened. When the video played, people went silent. The shaky footage filled the screen. The tomb, the crowd, the man's voice, the racist insult, the gun, the movement, the disarm, the blood, the arrest. Even though everyone knew what was coming, several people still flinched when the weapon appeared. Then the statements began. Evelyn Carter stood first. She walked slowly to the front, one hand resting on the rail. "My husband is buried at Arlington," she said. "I volunteer there because I believe memory needs caretakers." That man came to turn memory into fear. Sergeant Reed stopped him. But before the gun came out, there was another weapon. Words. He used race like a match near gasoline. He wanted to shame a soldier for standing where that soldier had earned the right to stand. She turned her head toward Sorin. "You failed." Sorin looked away. Arthur Malloy spoke next. His statement was shorter. "I have worn the uniform," he said. "I have seen men of every color bleed the same color. Anyone who says a black soldier does not belong at the tomb does not understand the tomb, the army, or America." He paused. Then added, "And anyone who pulls a gun at Arlington deserves to learn that old men still remember how to hate cowards." The judge asked him to keep his language restrained. Arthur nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I restrained it." A few people in the courtroom nearly smiled. Then Darius Cole stepped forward with Malik beside him. The boy held his father's hand tightly. Darius unfolded a paper. "My son saw a man point a gun at a tomb guard," he said. That is hard enough. But before that, my son heard a man suggest Sergeant Reed did not belong because he is black. I had to explain hatred to my child on sacred ground, his voice tight. I should not have had to do that. But because I did. I am grateful my son also saw Sergeant Reed answer hatred with discipline. He saw courage. He saw control. He saw a black man protect everyone, including people who had done nothing to protect him from insult. Darius looked at Marcus. My son still talks about him, Malik whispered something. Darius looked down. You want to say it, Malik nodded. The courtroom waited. The boy's voice was small. Sergeant Reed did belong there, that was all he said. But it was enough. Marcus looked down at his hands. When his turn came, he walked to the front. He did not look at the cameras. He looked at the judge. My name is Sergeant Marcus Reed, he began. I serve in the United States Army. I was on duty at the tomb of the unknown soldier when Victor Sorin approached the viewing area with a weapon and intent to harm civilians, dishonor the tomb, and create fear. His voice was steady. I have been asked many times what I felt when he insulted me. The answer is simple. I felt what many black service members have felt before me. I felt the old lie that our service is conditional, that our belonging must be approved, that our uniform can be questioned by people who never earned the right to judge it. The courtroom was silent. Marcus continued. But I also felt something stronger. I felt my father's service. My grandfather's service. The service of black soldiers who fought for this country, even when this country did not always fight for them. I felt the duty of the tomb, which honors sacrifice without asking what color a soldier was. He turned slightly, not toward Sorin, but toward the room. The tomb of the unknown soldier does not belong to hate. It does not belong to fear. It does not belong to men who use history as a weapon. It belongs to the fallen. And as long as I am entrusted with that post, I will guard it, he paused. Then looked directly at Sorin. You came to Arlington thinking racism would make me break, and violence would make me fall. You were wrong twice, no one spoke. Sorin's smile had disappeared. The judge thanked Marcus. The hearing continued. But the sentence that followed the case through every headline was already spoken. Wrong twice. Victor Sorin was convicted. The sentence was long. Long enough that the world would change before he walked freely again, if he ever did. Some people celebrated. Some moved on. News cycles found new stories. The clips became shorter. The headlines changed. But at Arlington, the watch continued. Marcus Reed returned to duty. 21 steps. Turn. Pause. 21 seconds. The public sometimes recognized him now. He could feel it. Visitors whispered his name. Some lifted phones even when they should not. Some looked at him with admiration so heavy it almost became another burden. Marcus accepted none of it. Not outwardly. He gave the tomb what he had always given it. Precision, discipline, silence. But things had changed around him. Not the tomb. The tomb did not change. The people did. Evelyn Carter returned to volunteering 2 weeks after the attack. She moved a little slower, but she refused to stop. When someone asked why she came back, she said, because fear is a poor caretaker. Arthur Malloy began visiting more often. He told anyone who would listen that the country still had soldiers worth trusting. if they tried to thank him for his own service. He waved them off and said, "Thank the young ones. They are still carrying it." Darius brought Malik back on a clear Saturday morning. This time Malik carried flowers. Not for Marcus. For the tomb. He stood behind the rope, quieter than before. Darius watched him carefully. "You okay?" Malik nodded. "I wanted to see it again without the bad man." Darius put a hand on his shoulder. "That is a good reason." Marcus was on duty that day. When he passed, Malik stood straight. Not stiff, not scared, proud. Marcus could not acknowledge him during the watch. But as he turned, the edge of Malik's letter rested inside his uniform, folded carefully, close to his heart. Later, after his shift, Marcus met them near the visitor walkway with Colonel Harper's permission. Malik stood behind his father at first, then stepped forward. "Hi, Sergeant Reed," Marcus nodded. "Hello, Malik. I brought flowers for the soldiers I saw." Malik looked down. "My teacher asked us to write about a hero." Darius smiled softly. Marcus already knew where this was going and wished, for a moment, that children did not make honesty so direct. Malik looked up. "I wrote about you." Marcus knelt slightly. "I am honored." Malik hesitated. "Is it okay?" "Is what okay?" "That I want to be a soldier." Darius looked at Marcus. There was something in his face that asked for care. Marcus understood. He did not tell the boy yes quickly. He did not tell him no. He said, "It is okay to want to serve. But you should know what service means." Malik listened. "It is not about looking strong," Marcus said. "It is not about carrying a weapon. It is not about people clapping for you. Service means giving part of your life to something bigger than yourself. It means discipline when you are tired. Courage when you are afraid. Respect even when others do not show it first." Malik nodded seriously. "And if people say I do not belong," Marcus looked at him, "then you remember that their words do not outrank your character." Darius lowered his head. Malik seemed to think about that. Then he said, "My dad says you earned every step." Marcus glanced at Darius. Darius gave a small nod. Marcus looked back at Malik. "Your dad is right," the boy smiled. Not because the world had become simple. It had not. But because someone he admired had made it feel possible to stand inside it. That mattered. In the months that followed, Marcus received hundreds of letters. Some from veterans. Some from military families. Some from black service members who wrote about being doubted in uniform. Some from white veterans who apologized for things they had once ignored. Some from children who drew pictures of the tomb guard with a flag behind him. One letter came from a retired colonel who had served with Marcus's father. He wrote, "Your father carried himself like a man who knew history was watching. So do you." Marcus read that one 3 times. Then placed it beside Malik's. He did not keep every letter. But he kept the ones that reminded him the story was not about fame. It was about memory moving forward. Still, not every response was kind. There were comments online. Cruel ones. Men and women hiding behind screens, questioning the story, minimizing the racism, saying the media had exaggerated it, saying Marcus was being used, saying race had nothing to do with it. Marcus did not respond. Colonel Harper once asked if he wanted public affairs to issue another statement. Marcus shook his head. "No, ma'am." "You are sure?" "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" Marcus looked out toward the tomb. "Some people ask questions because they want truth," he said. Others ask because they want permission not to care. I cannot help the second kind, Colonel Harper nodded. The watch continued. And slowly the story became less about the fugitive. That was justice in its own way. Victor Soren had wanted his name attached to the tomb. Instead, people remembered Marcus Reed, Evelyn Carter, Arthur Malloy, Darius and Malik. They remembered the old veteran saying the tomb was more than marble. They remembered the boy saying Sergeant Reed belonged there. They remembered that hatred had entered Arlington armed and confident, and honor had sent it away bleeding and in cuffs. 1 year later, on another autumn morning, Marcus Reed stood at the tomb of the unknown soldier. The air felt familiar. Cold, clean, still. The leaves moved softly along the grass. White headstones stretched across the hills. Families walked slowly under the pale sun. And at the tomb, a crowd gathered behind the rope. Most did not know it was the anniversary of their attack. Arlington did not announce such things. The tomb did not need anniversaries of hatred. It had enough anniversaries of sacrifice. Marcus preferred it that way. He did not want the day remembered because of Victor Soren. He wanted it remembered, if at all, because the watch had not broken. 21 steps. Turn. Pause. 21 seconds. Behind the crowd, Evelyn Carter stood at her volunteer station, older now by 1 hard year, but still there. Arthur Malloy sat on a bench, cane between his knees, wearing his Korean War cap. Darius Cole stood near the front with Malik. The boy was 8 now. A little taller, still holding a flag. But this time he also held a folded sheet of paper. After Marcus completed his watch and was relieved, Colonel Harper approached him. "There are a few people who would like to see you," she said. Marcus glanced toward the visitor walkway. He already knew. "Yes, ma'am." A few minutes later he stood with Evelyn, Arthur, Darius, and Malik beneath the shade of a tree overlooking the rows of white markers. For a moment none of them spoke. Some moments do not need to be filled quickly. Evelyn broke the silence first. "I still hear it sometimes," she said. Marcus looked at her. "The gunshot?" he asked. She nodded. "Not every day. But sometimes," Arthur grunted. "That happens." Evelyn looked at him. Arthur shrugged. "War has a long echo." Darius placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. "That day changed him," he said. Marcus looked at the boy. Malik did not seem frightened. Only serious. "How?" Marcus asked. Darius smiled faintly. "He reads about soldiers now. Not just battles. People. Names. Stories." Malik unfolded the paper in his hand. "I wrote something," he said. Marcus waited. Malik looked nervous. Evelyn smiled at him. Arthur leaned on his cane. Darius nodded. Malik began to read. "At Arlington, I learned that honor is not loud. It does not have to yell to be strong. Sergeant Reed was quiet, but he was not weak. The bad man had a gun and hate. Sergeant Reed had courage and discipline. My dad says some people try to make others feel small because they are small inside. I think honor means not becoming like them. I think sacrifice has no color. I think Sergeant Reed belonged at the tomb because he protected everyone there, including me." Malik stopped. His hands shook slightly. Then he looked up. "That is all." No one spoke for a second. Arthur cleared his throat. Well, he said, voice rough, that is better than most speeches I have heard from grown men. Evelyn wiped her eyes. Darius rested his hand on the back of Malik's neck. Marcus crouched slightly so he could look Malik in the eye. You wrote that? Yes, sir. You believe it? Yes, sir. Marcus nodded. Then carry it carefully. Words like that matter. Malik folded the paper. Can I ask you something? Yes. Do you forgive the bad man? The question landed harder than Marcus expected. Evelyn looked down. Arthur's jaw tight. Darius almost interrupted, then stopped. Marcus took his time. I do not carry him with me every day, he said. That is as close as he gets. Malik thought about that. So you do not hate him. Marcus looked toward the hills of Arlington. Hate is heavy, he said. And I already carry enough. The boy nodded slowly. Marcus continued. What he did was evil. What he said was wrong. Justice answered him. That is enough. Malik looked at the tomb. Will people always say things like that? Marcus did not lie. Some will. Malik's face fell a little. Marcus placed one hand gently over the folded paper. But not all. And every time someone stands with honor. Every time someone tells the truth, every time someone refuses to let hate decide who belongs, that old lie gets weaker. Darius closed his eyes for a moment. Evelyn whispered, Amen. Arthur lifted his cane slightly. Amen to that. Later, Marcus walked alone for a few minutes through the cemetery. He stopped at his father's grave. Staff Sergeant Elijah Reed. Beloved husband. Beloved father. Soldier. The headstone was clean. Marcus stood before it in silence. Then he spoke softly. I am still standing. The wind moved through the grass. Somewhere behind him, the ceremony continued. Another guard walked the path. 21 steps. Turn. Pause. 21 seconds. Marcus looked down at the stone. They tried to make it about hate, he said. But it became about honor. He thought of Malik's letter. Evelyn's courage. Arthur's salute. Darius shielding his son. Colonel Harper's steady voice. The crowd lowering their phones. The tomb untouched. The watch unbroken. Then he thought of the unknown soldiers. Men who had given everything and lost even their names. No one knew their skin. No one knew their eyes. No one knew the sound of their laugh. No one knew whether they had been rich or poor, black or white, immigrant or native born, famous or forgot. But the nation honored them. That was the truth Marcus guarded. Not a perfect country. A promise. A promise that sacrifice would not be measured by race. That service would not be erased by hatred. That sacred memory would outlast violent men with borrowed names. Marcus removed Malik's first letter from inside his jacket. He had carried a copy of it for months. The paper was worn at the folds. He read the last line again. When I grow up, I want to stand tall like you. Marcus folded it carefully, then placed it back near his heart. By late afternoon, the sun dipped lower over Arlington. The shadows of the headstones stretched across the grass. Families began to leave. The air grew colder. At the tomb, the guard continued. Step, turn, pause, step. The ritual looked simple from a distance. But everyone who understood it knew better. Each step carried weight. Each pause carried memory. Each turn carried a promise. The man with the gun had believed he could break that promise. He had believed racism could make Marcus smaller. He had believed fear could make sacred ground weak. He was wrong. The tomb still stood. The watch still continued. And Sergeant Marcus Reed, Black Tomb Guard, son of a fallen soldier, guardian of the unknown dead, remained part of a line that no hatred could erase. Because honor has no color, sacrifice has no race, and respect is never optional. So when you see a soldier standing watch, do not mistake silence for weakness. Do not mistake discipline for emptiness. Do not mistake ceremony for performance. Sometimes the quietest person on the ground is the one standing between danger and everyone else. Sometimes the strongest answer to hate is not shouting back. It is standing taller. It is protecting what matters. It is returning to duty after the world has tried to shake you. At Arlington, the lines are not protected by rope alone. They are protected by memory, by courage, by sacrifice, by the men and women who stand watch when others sleep, who hold the line when others run, and who remind us that the fallen are never truly forgot as long as honor still has guardians. If this story moved you, subscribe to Tomb Guard Honor for more powerful stories about respect, sacrifice, justice, and the silent guardians who protect the memory of the fallen. And remember, the tomb does not ask a soldier's color before honoring his sacrifice.